Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40k Universe. I am your host, Gershwin, and you are watching One Mind Syndicate. Today we continue talking about Chaos Cults as we get into the Pilgrims of Hate. If you guys are new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40k content every single day, and if you have any suggestions, just comment down below. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on the Pilgrims of Hate. The Pilgrims of Hate is an apocalyptic chaos cult dedicated to murder. They have plagued the Calixis sector for nearly 3 standard centuries. The cult's ultimate goal is a simple one: the destruction of the Imperium. The first major incident attributed to the cult, the event surrounding the Bloody Solstice, set the pattern for much of the cult's later activities, and can be seen as emblematic of its worst excess and black-hearted passions. In the years immediately following the destruction of House Koba on Malphite, order had been restored to all but the most desolate areas of the upper Hive cities. An uneasy truce forced upon the fractured ruling houses and guilds. This fragile peace, however, was rocketed by a series of dreadful murders. Members of the ecclesiarchy, ranging from lowly preachers serving in the poorest stacks to senior canons who tended the high altar of the Seven-Spire Basilica, they were all being murdered. Some died in what at first seemed accidents, others were attacked almost at random by screaming madmen, and more were torn apart by unknown forces behind locked and barred doors. As the death toll rose, the local planetary enforcers and arbiters couldn't find any links or common cause between them other than their faith, and seemed powerless to stop the ever-spiraling number of killings. The targeting of the faithful in this manner caused a serious threat to the faith of the populace, and resulted in copycat killings, the vandalism of shrines, open unbelief, and public panic reaching epidemic proportions. Eventually, the holy ordos of the Inquisition were called in despite the misgivings of the elite. With 3 full inquisitors heading the task force, a brutal crackdown into suspected cult activity was carried out. It was discovered that a powerful group calling itself the Pilgrims of Hate lay behind the attacks. The Ordo learned that from a stronghold in a deserted industrial hive sector known as the Rustblight Scav Zone, they had infiltrated numerous refugee camps, low High-Heb communities, and even some isolated shrines, replacing the imperial clergy entirely. The cult preyed on the weak, the desperate, and those that Malphite's decades of near anarchy had abused and made destitute, turning them against imperial law and imperial faith. What the Inquisition had not guessed at were the demonic powers the master of the cult possessed. When a 400-strong force of Adeptus Arbitus and inductees of the Imperial Guard closed in on the cult's stronghold on the fateful eve of the solstice of the Winter Martyr, they were expected. No sooner had the Inquisition penetrated the interior of the zone than attacks began from waves of crazed cult zealots, more than willing to die if they could take the loyalists with them. As the task force forged slowly ahead through the maze of rusted works, it was hard-pressed when horrific mutants and terrible slaughtering beasts, clearly twisted and bound with the energies of the warp, entered the fray. The inducted troopers began to fail and rout in the face of the enemy, only to be mercilessly hunted down and destroyed by the insane cultists. The hardier Imperials, such as Arbitus kill teams, soon found themselves isolated, outnumbered, and overwhelmed as their ammunition ran dry, and shimmering demons rippled out from the shadows to tear them apart. The 3 Inquisitors, finding their fighters spread out and overcome, moved to rally and concentrate their force. However, they underestimated the dark motivator behind the cult. He called himself Karcist, Prophet of Truth, and he presented himself to the embattled Ordo forces with no less terrible allies than a pair of bound demon hosts at his side. A massacre followed, and although the resolute Inquisitor managed to destroy one of the demon hosts, only Inquisitor Corina, his right arm, withered to the bone by the touch of a demon host, managed to escape. News of the Holy Ordo's defeat, no doubt disseminated by the carefully placed cultists and traitors, spread like wildfire through the upper echelons of power. The nobility isolated themselves, abandoning the people to fend for themselves. For a brief time, the whole planet seemed to cower in terror, and a great world tottered on the brink of the abyss. The bloody solstice had begun. Madmen and warp-tainted freaks erupted onto the streets, killing and burning with wild abandon, seemingly without pattern or purpose. Adeptus Ministorum temples were attacked and their congregations massacred, and with the central Adeptus Arbitus preaching fortress, a carnal demon was unleashed, killing scores of loyal arbitrators before it was finally destroyed by concentrated cannon fire. As riot and panic broke out and killed thousands more, the Planetary Defense Force detachments and the local enforcers were overwhelmed. Power was cut, and fires raged out of control. The whole structure of Malphai's continental-spanning hive city nearly collapsed. Invoking his full authority, the maimed Inquisitor Corina called together a meeting of Malphai's great houses, presenting an impassioned demand for them to lend their weight to the fight or lose everything. He appealed to their faith and their duty first, but it is recorded that it was not until he mocked their injured pride and stupidity for allowing such heresies to fester in their midst that they sided with him. With the leadership, private armies, and even secretive assassin cadres of the great houses, the Loyalists fought the rising tide of anarchy and the suicidal fury of the Pilgrims of Hate head-on. For solar week after solar week of grueling and bloody fighting, they held their ground, as further aid poured into from the Holy Ordos and the Battlefleet Calixes. They gained the upper hand. Order was restored, and the last remnants of the cult battered itself to extinction against the Imperial forces. Karcist and several of his subordinate sorcerers were never found during the great Malefian purge that followed, but were cited leading cults and atrocities in later decades all across the sector. The arch-heretic Karcist finally met his end, not at the hands of the Inquisition, but in the power-fisted grip of the rogue trader Harriman Vale near a standard century later. In the final analysis, the bloody solstice of Malphai provided a deadly exclamation point at the end of 7 standard decades of misrule, miscord, untrust, unrest, and bloodshed for Malphai. It has since entered the myths and history of that world as the direst moment of a dark age. At the core of the true beliefs of the Pilgrims of Hate is nihilism of the spirit, utter hopelessness and despair for humanity's true place in the universe as they perceive it, that of a squabbling, blind creature utterly at the mercy of a deadly cosmos and a hungering warp. To them, civilization, reason, faith, love, family, morality, hope, pleasure, and honor are all lies and stillborn dreams, wrangled at birth by uncaring and implicable realities. The answer, as far as they are concerned, is total destruction, the violent self-immolation of mankind's carefully created web of lies and deceits. It is to embrace the madness, suffering, and despair that are humanity's only real truths. It is to hate and kill and tear down until nothing remains. Those brought into the cult are selected chiefly for a seed of bitterness or resentment that they carry with them. Some remember slights or injustices, incidences only too common in the oppressive crush of imperial society. The cult works on this flaw, to erode the recruit's inhibitions, morality, and consciousness, to the point where the hatred and sense of outrage and betrayal consumes him. As he progresses through the cult's outer layers of lies and deceit, the initiate is granted hideous revelations and subjected to horrific suffering and demonic rituals designed to further strip away his sanity and damn him completely, leaving him most likely either dead, murderously deranged, or tainted by the corrupt influence of the warp. Those few cultists that survive long enough or show particular promise are taken under the wing of a false prophet and directly tutored in the art of the sorcerer and demagogue. It is then that their masters show them that even the worship of chaos is a lie, a tool to be used as the beings of the warp would use them. If these aspirants survive such dark wisdom and the dangers of their tutelage, then they become false prophets in return, and carve their own bloody path across the stars. And those were 40 facts on the Pilgrims of Hate. I really love the Pilgrims of Hate because they illustrate what a Tzeentch cult would be like. They are deceitful, treacherous, and they see themselves above others, even to the point that they see themselves above chaos. The worship of chaos is a lie. Tzeentch is kind of the same way. Even though Tzeentch understands that the other chaos gods, he or she can't destroy the other chaos gods, Tzeentch sees himself above them because he can manipulate them and get them to do what he wants to do through his web of lies and treachery. And I think the Pilgrims of Hate illustrate this perfectly. Now, if GW ever decided to create a cultist-centric faction, I think the Pilgrims of Hate would be an excellent choice to be like the forefront or the poster boys of this type of cultist faction. The reason I bring this up, right now in Warhammer 40k, the tabletop game, cultists are squishy. They're pointless, and they don't really count for much. They just count as like cannon fodder, basically. It's really nice to eat up a bunch of damage from a tough gun or whatever, because they're easy to kill. But GW has the opportunity to create a faction that is a type of Trump faction. Much like a blue mana player in Magic the Gathering usually tries to do things to negate the spells of his opponent, the cultists or these Pilgrims of Hate could have some type of special ability that stops, let's say, command protocols, reanimation protocols, or takes away command points, or stops command points, or even gets rid of chapter tactics when a unit is near them. Something that you don't really see in Warhammer 40k, and something that you do see a lot in Magic the Gathering. You would be that asshole that keeps playing instances whenever I'm trying to cast something. Same way in Warhammer 40k. You would be that asshole who would say, oh, sorry, can't use that special ability. My cultists are right next to yours. Or my cultists are in line of sight of you, or something like that. GW doesn't really do this in the tabletop game, and I would really love to see that. It would be a way to boost a weak aspect of the game. So things like the Imperial Guard, the cultists, they're all pretty weak, pretty squishy, but they could be an awesome, I guess, tactical turning point. Or I don't know. I forget what that's called in Magic. Blue mana is, I don't know. Comment down below. I hope I make sense, guys. Again, if you like these videos, share them with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, or whatever social media you guys use. And if you guys have any suggestions or anything, just comment down below. We read the comments every single day. If you want to support us a little bit more, jump on over to Patreon. A simple $1 a month helps us create more videos. If you can't, we understand. Simply by liking, commenting, and sharing, especially sharing, it really helps out the channel. With that said, guys, I'll see you tomorrow. This was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.